Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Research Lab. Today, I am joined by Luca, who is a CRO specialist at Avast.
Hello, thanks for having me.
What we're going to do today is do a review of the Samaritans website. So essentially, we're going to review the website based on Spiro's UX heuristic principles and identify some opportunities for improvement, both from a UX perspective and from a content and copy perspective as well. The Samaritans is a charity in the UK, and they provide emotional support for people struggling with their mental health or going through kind of emotional distress, struggling to cope, and ultimately people who are at risk of suicide. From a website perspective, there's a few key audiences, both people who need help and then also people who are looking to donate. And then finally, people who are actually looking to volunteer. Myself and Luca have both been through some of the key pages on the website and identified some areas of opportunity. And so starting off with the brilliant basics. So to quote Craig Sullivan, pick broken ship first. And so Luca, what opportunities did you find within this topic for the Samaritans to focus on?
I'd say the first probably thing for them to do would be to kind of make the site responsive, and this especially pertains to the mobile version of the website. So when you open the mobile site, there's a lot of arguably unnecessary space taking up valuable real estate. And for instance, the hero image is not necessarily helpful or useful, and it's definitely distracting in terms of it takes away the attention from the main element on the page, on the entire site probably, which is the phone number, which is what someone coming to this kind of website is probably looking for. It's kind of the equivalent of not having a call to action visible straight away above the fold.
On that same note, with regards to the phone number, something I identified, which I think I just showed earlier, was this area appears to be clickable. So you can kind of click, but obviously if you're on mobile, you want to click on the phone number, you expect click to call, but actually it takes you through to this next page, which is about contact. And then the phone number is no longer visible until you kind of scroll down. So for somebody, like you say, in an emergency, we want to make it as quick for them to get in contact as possible. When you then go back to desktop, the phone number does have click to call here for mobile, but obviously styling it like a button for desktop users is kind of jarring as well, because you're like, well, I'll try and click on this because it looks clickable, but obviously it doesn't go anywhere.
I think it would be worth testing kind of to invert the information hierarchy such that the phone number gets much more visual prominence. Obviously headlines are important, but when you're dealing with such sensitive issues, which we have to take into account here, you really need to make sure that you're serving your primary audience.
I was quite surprised to not see the phone number actually in the header. Obviously you have this linked contact, which takes you to this page that we're on now. But quite often on websites in general, you'll have a phone number in the header, and then it does have that consistent place. And then you don't need to worry so much about styling it consistently throughout different pages, because it's ultimately one element and always there. So moving on then to our kind of second key theme. So secondly, one of the things that we identified was around relevance. For me, one of the things that stood out as a female when I arrived on this page was that there's two pictures of men, and it specifically calls out, you can help Samaritans reach more men who are struggling. And I guess for me, I felt like if I was coming here in a state of distress and I needed some support, I maybe would feel that this wasn't the right place for me.
I fully agree with the point on addressing men more so than women on the homepage. They actually have information and statistics on why men are more at risk of suicide in the UK at the moment. And from that standpoint, of course, it makes more sense maybe to address it the way they did, but they could definitely add information via tooltips or asterisks or something that can kind of explain earlier on the page without having, to scroll down to see why they're like talking about men more than women.
I like the idea of a tooltip maybe to go into more detail, but actually, just a change in headline here, like men are X% more likely, to be at risk of suicides than women. An additional sentence in that headline perhaps would, or maybe actually in the subheading or something, just to help kind of address why that is. I was also having a look around at some other charity websites, just for some inspiration. And I came across an example, I think it's right, on Water Aid, which is obviously a completely different kind of situation. Um, I like the fact that they kind of led with some stats. So this is kind of what I guess I was thinking there was, lead with a stat. How many people are at risk, how many men are at risk, for example, to help kind of validate the content and the focus of your content. On the point of imagery, I was kind of questioning, well, who are these people? This guy,
Hmm.
who is this? I think it's a really easy opportunity to put a name and an age and a location and like he's one of our volunteers maybe, or maybe he's somebody that was helped by the Samaritans. Although there are quite a lot of pictures of people, the site felt a little bit faceless because I didn't know who any of them were.
I was actually thinking of the fact that they don't really have nearly enough pictures of and quotes of like their team members, their volunteers, the
Yeah.
people in the organization. Like you feel as if you're looking at a bunch of stock photos, and that might not be the case if they actually featured their team. You wouldn't feel that the website is a barrier. Like you would feel as if you're already in touch with them. And I think adding more kind of team photos, volunteer photos, quotes throughout the site might help. I wanted to add another point to do with the kind of donation slider that's just there underneath that headline, which I think from a UX standpoint and also a copywriting standpoint could be improved um, in a couple of ways. For one, many people might not even consider donating more than the minimum amount. So you only get the information, what like donating 10 or 20 pounds does for Samaritans once you change the slider to that amount. But if you don't change the slider, which many people might not bother to, like they will never know, how much more they can help if they donate just like £5 more. So my idea was to potentially change the layout of this information to make it more obvious. That brings us to the donation page, which I think you had some very, very good comments on. So maybe you can, take it away on that one.
Yeah, sure. I think your previous comment just leads really nicely into my initial thought, which was I just felt this page was very functional. There's all the form fields that are necessary. It does its job. But something that we kind of say in terms of UX principles is yes, users need to be able to physically fill in the form. So, you need no fields need to be clearly labeled, you want error messaging that's clear for users. But ultimately, after it's functional, users need to actually be motivated to do the thing. And I think at this point, it really lacks any of that, you're two steps away from helping save a life or, some of those kind of pulling at the heartstrings a little bit, keeping me focused on, the reason why I'm doing this, I think is super important and a really, really big priority here.
Absolutely. And I think that with this kind of service, if I can call it that, it's tremendously important to keep the context in mind at all times, because it's not your typical checkout. It's not your typical like e-commerce site. We're dealing with very, very sensitive issues here. And I think the more humane and reaffirming you can make your entire funnel, I guess, including this donation step, I think the better. And using, social proof like volunteer quotes, which they do have on the site, but adding them here perhaps might help validate that decision and kind of push people in the right direction.
Thanks so much, Luca, for joining me today. I've had a great time picking the website apart and identifying some opportunities with you. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.